Members of Parliament, support staff, radio listeners, TV viewers, all following this meeting via social media, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I welcome you to this public meeting of Parliament for today, Wednesday, November the 5th, 2025. This is public meeting number 5. At this time, I want to give a special welcome to the Honorable Minister of Finance, Ms. Marinka Gums, and her support staff. We have established a quorum of 8 members. I invite you to stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. I have received notice of absence from the members MP De Weaver and MP Doran, and no notice of lateness thus far, and the opportunity, of course, is right now for members here on the floor. If they have any notifications, we do have a notification from MP Shamira Roseberg, to whom I give the floor at this moment.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Lady. Blessed afternoon to all. I just would like to take the opportunity and to acknowledge and use this moment to pay attention to the situation currently, the heartbreaking situation currently in Sudan. I always say we are African first, and therefore it's sad to see that the current situation has escalated, where countless families currently endure suffering, displacement, and loss, and their struggle reminds us actually how fragile peace can be and how easily it can be taken for granted. And I believe here in St. Maarten, we are blessed with stability in that sense and dialogue, and we should never forget the value of our diplomatic relationships with the kingdom and beyond. May we remind that our nation stands for empathy, for unity, and also for a peaceful resolution of conflict, wherever it can be. That's all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, MP Roseberg, for that statement during this round of notifications. And the next member of Parliament making use of notifications is MP Lewis. MP Lewis, I invite you to take the floor.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to the Honorable Minister of Finance and your support staff. Good afternoon to the honorable colleagues here. Madam Chair, I just would like to wish, first and foremost, my brother, my last brother today, he's celebrating his birthday. Over the weekend also, my only grandparent living, my grandmother, she just turned 77. I would like to also wish her publicly a happy birthday. For all those who know Ms. Dotlin, she was also the prison chaplain in Point Blanche Prison. After I post a picture of her on my status, I received outpouring messages, and some of them also came from ex-inmates who acknowledged that they were ex-inmates and they were looking for her, and they so appreciate her. So I want to publicly say, grandmother, you are loved. Many people looked up to you, including, of course, your grandson who is here today in this honorable House of Parliament, and to my twin aunt and uncle that also celebrated their birthday yesterday. I would like to wish you all the best, much love, strength, and more life. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, MP Lewis. Well said, and I join you in wishing your grandmom a very happy birthday as well. There is no other member of Parliament wishing to make use of the opportunity to speak during notification, so we can continue with this meeting for today. The agenda point for this public meeting is deliberations on the issues surrounding the Central Bank of Curacao and St. Maarten. And those issues have been summed up as follows. A, the recent nomination of the chairman of the CBCS by the Council of Ministers, B, an update on the ENNIA situation, and C, developments concerning Mullet Bay. The request for this meeting is registered on the IS 092 of this parliamentary year, and it is dated the 22nd of September of this year. Before going over to the agenda points, this is a public meeting of Parliament, and I just want to remind the members of Parliament of the usage of interruptions, which I will allow during this meeting. And of course, the members of Parliament, I would assume, are aware, since we have been using the possibility for interruptions for a while now, that these interruptions will be allowed by myself, but they must seek two. One, clarifications. The interruption lectern can also be used to challenge assertions, things that are said here on the floor, as well as contribute additional information to matters that are being brought forward. They must, however, always consist of brief remarks or a sort of a question like in follow-up to something that is said. The members receive the opportunity for 3 interruptions per agenda point. As I mentioned, it was on September the 22nd that we received a request for this meeting, and it came from the members Ottley, Lacroes, Doran, York, and Irion. And I also mentioned already that it is registered on the IS 092. As is customary at this time, I give the opportunity to one of the requesters, if the need is there, to briefly elucidate this request. Is the need there for this to happen? I don't get an indication that it is, so that would mean that we could immediately go over and give the floor to the Honorable Minister of Finance, Ms. Gums, for the opening remarks and presentation and/or presentation as the items for discussion have been outlined, and the minister is cognizant of those items, so the minister can immediately go over to address them or introduce them in any case. So with that, Minister of Finance, Ms. Marinka Gums, I give you the floor on the agenda point for this meeting.
Honorable Chair Lady, honorable members of Parliament, Griffier, members in the Tribune, my dedicated support staff, persons tuned in on social media platforms, radio listeners, all under the sound of my voice, good afternoon and blessed day to all. Madam Chair, let me start by thanking you for convening this meeting. Unfortunately, due to the time limitations during the question hour, I was not able to provide a complete picture of what transpired. For this reason, I would also like to thank the members of Parliament who requested this meeting, thereby giving me the opportunity to clear the air about what seems to be, at best, an honest difference of opinion on the legal interpretation of the Charter or statutes of the Central Bank of Curacao and St. Maarten. Through you, Madam Chair, mention was made regarding why it took some time for me to attend this meeting. I want to clarify that this delay was not due to the topic of the chair position. The agenda also included the matters of ENNIA and Mullet Bay, for which I required information from the Central Bank of Curacao and St. Maarten in order to provide members of Parliament with a proper and informed update. What started as a sincere effort on my part to restore some semblance of normalcy to the governance structure of the bank has resulted in a political firestorm that has engulfed the whole island and beyond. This has ultimately led to the candidate I nominated to chair the Supervisory Board of Directors withdrawing himself from the process. In fact, recent political developments in Curacao with the resignation of that island's Minister of Finance on October 25, 2025, further complicates the situation. As previously discussed, the agreements made with the then Minister of Finance will now need to be reconvened, with the current acting Minister of Finance. So in effect, Madam Chair, we are unfortunately back to square one, as it was agreed with the previous Minister of Finance, Curacao, that St. Maarten was to hold the chair position. However, although St. Maarten should have had a chair appointed over the past 4 years, this was not done. And in theory, it would now be Curaçao's turn. Nevertheless, I was able to negotiate for St. Maarten to still have the opportunity to assume the chair, though I cannot guarantee that this arrangement will remain the same going forward, as these conversations now has to be reconvened with our counterpart. Hence my statement, we are back to square one. Madam Chair, the facts will clearly show that I did not once deviate from the law. To the contrary, I acted in full compliance with the law, and I will demonstrate that to the honorable members of Parliament. I do, however, acknowledge, and I repeat, I acknowledge that these are differences of opinion in the interpretation of the law. Nevertheless, I hope to clarify my perspective and encourage that we view the law in a holistic manner. Madam Chair, the issue before us is really about proper oversight at an institution of such importance as the Central Bank of Curacao and St. Maarten. It is also, in my humble view, about St. Maarten's effective representation on the Supervisory Board of Directors of the bank. Madam Chair, first things first. In its preamble, the Charter of the Central Bank establishes that decision-making by the countries shall be on the basis of fairness between the countries. This simply means that in this monetary union, St. Maarten and Curacao are married in what could be considered community of goods. The relationship is therefore one of equality, where it concerns decision-making. That is why the overarching principle is that nominations and appointments have to be made jointly. And I emphasize jointly by the Ministers of Finance of Curacao and St. Maarten. This is a fundamental concept which I will further address today. Madam Chair, for 4 years and possibly more, the Supervisory Board of Directors has been without a duly appointed chairman. A member from Curacao has acted in that capacity temporarily during that period. It should also be noted that St. Maarten has been lacking one additional member for the past 3 years. It goes without saying that St. Maarten needs to be properly represented on an important board like this. Since it was agreed with my counterpart from Curacao at the time that St. Maarten should get the chairmanship of the board, I consider it in the best interest of the people of St. Maarten to ensure that we do what is necessary to fill that vacant position. That was my motivation from the beginning, and it remains my motivation today. At present, we are in the minority on the Supervisory Board of Directors. Besides, we have nobody on the management board of the bank. In my view, we cannot continue to act as if we were junior partners in this monetary union. If we want to be treated as equals, we must act as such. We must take the initiative when necessary, rather than wait on Curacao to do so all the time. This is what Article 25, sub 3 of the Charter, which many has referred to, actually states, and I quote, "The chairman of the Board of Supervisory Directors shall be appointed and removed jointly by the countries, Curacao and St. Maarten, by national decree. The appointment of the chairman shall be effected upon the joint nomination by the Ministers of Finance, which nomination shall be based on a recommendation by a 5/6 majority of the Board of Supervisory Directors." For some reason, Madam Chair, that statutory requirement of 5/6 majority of the SBOD in recommending a candidate has been omitted. in all the discussions about my alleged bypassing the board in nominating a candidate. Similarly, what needs to be taken into account that on several occasions, I had actually requested the board to send me their recommendation. Here is the evidence, Madam Chair. In my official letter sent to the board of CBCS dated December 12, 2024, I requested that a new recommendation be submitted to the Ministers of Finance of both St. Maarten and Curacao by December 31st, 2024, given our discussions since June. On January 21st, 2025, I sent a formal follow-up reminder to the Supervisory Board requesting an update and a candidate's name within 2 weeks. I stressed that timely attention was critical to ensure the CBCS operates effectively and upholds the highest standard of corporate governance. On January 31st, 2025, the board responded that a recommendation for chair would follow upon completion of the selection process, that several strong candidates had been identified for interviews, and that continuance, official appointment of other members should be considered. Since the January 31st letter, additional matters have arisen within the CBCS, including issues related to the former director that were discussed with the board in July 2025. On June 26, 2025, the former director of the CBCS resigned 3 days before assuming a key position at the bank that he previously oversaw. The SBOD informed me on June 27, 2025, that the former director resigned as per July 1, 2025. This was very alarming, and I immediately requested that the matter be discussed with the board. My known objections to the matter in which the process was able to take place were shared both publicly and in more detail with the Supervisory Board of Directors. Furthermore, to date, no new director has been appointed. While the Charter stipulates that a new director is appointed by the countries by national decree from a joint nomination of the Ministers of Finance on the basis of a recommendation by at least 5 members of the Supervisory Board. And in the event of interim dismissal of a director, the nomination and appointment will take place within 3 months of the resignation. This 3-month period expired on October 1st, 2025. And until today, I did not receive any recommendation of the Supervisory Board of Directors. This actually presents an important opportunity to have a St. Martiner represented on the management board of the Central Bank of Curacao and St. Maarten. If that will be the case is yet to be seen. After the July 2025 meeting, the need to have an appointed chair became even more evident. Because no recommendation was provided, my team reviewed the charter and the history of prior nominations. Considering my repeated requests to the Supervisory Board of Directors for a chair and the associated governance risk, it became obvious that rather than allow the process to remain stalled, something had to be done to move it forward. I did not bypass the authority of the Supervisory Board of Directors. To the contrary, I complied with the requirements of the Charter and actively sought their recommendation. The recommendations of the board must be backed by a 5/6 majority of its total members for the position of chairperson. While everyone has been dwelling on the fact that the process begins with the recommendation of the board, which I have requested and received no recommendation, an equally important part of Article 25 sub 3 of the Charter, the 5/6 majority needed, this part is treated as if it does not exist. In my opinion, 5/6 majority, Madam Chair, means 5 out of 6 board members must agree to the candidate to be recommended to the ministers for the latter to jointly nominate and then proceed to the actual appointment of the chairman. This, as implied by recital 3.8 of the decision of the Common Court of August 23, 2021, which temporarily appointed 5 members, bringing the Supervisory Board of Directors to a total of 6 members. Besides the temporary status of its current members and the lack of a substantive chairman, questions might be asked here, Madam Chair. What do we understand by temporary? Is 4 years temporary? The regular term of an appointed member of the Supervisory Board of Directors is 4 years as per the Supervisory Board, as per CBCS's charter. My apologies. The statement can be made that temporary should not be 4 years, which is the full term of office of board members. While here we are more than 4 years down the road and we still have temporary board members. Moreover, this whole situation flies in the face of good corporate governance and can undermine the functioning of the CBCS. How is regulatory body tasked with ensuring the financial health and integrity of our country expected to function optimally without properly constituted supervisory board of directors for more than 4 years? In fact, Madam Chair, the CBCS forms part of the critical issues highlighted in the governing program of our coalition government. On page 30 of the program, which can be found on the government's website, one can read the following under the caption, Critical Issues. Central Bank of Curacao and St. Maarten. A, review recent CBCS decisions and assess the viability of the monetary union. B, ensure corporate governance improvements and the establishment of a complete board with qualified St. Maarten representatives. C, assess potential acquisition of Mullet Bay for St. Maarten. D, monitor CBCS's implementation of supervisory enhancements and advocate for qualified, high-paying jobs in St. Maarten. Madam Chair, I believe I have not only been compliant with the charter, but I have also been following our governing program faithfully. Let me make it clear once again, contrary to initial media reports which ignited the firestorm, which stated incorrectly, Council of Ministers appoints candidate as new board chairman CBCS. There was no appointment of any candidate for the long vacant position of chairman of the Supervisory Board of Directors of CBCS. Madam Chair, there are 4 necessary steps to be taken before a candidate can be formally appointed to chair the Supervisory Board of Directors. 1, recommendation of candidates by the Supervisory Board of Directors with a 5/6 majority for the position of chairman. 2, nomination of the candidate jointly by the Ministers of Finance of Curacao and St. Maarten. 3, screenings of the candidate, among others by the respective national agencies, the VDSM in St. Maarten's case. And 4, appointment. The members are appointed jointly by the countries, by national decree, meaning one member needs 2 national decrees to be appointed, one signed by the Governor of St. Maarten and countersigned by the Minister of Finance of St. Maarten, and the other signed by the Governor of Curacao and countersigned by the Minister of Finance of Curacao. It should be noted that the terms recommendation, nomination, and appointment have unfortunately been used interchangeably as if they were synonyms, thereby creating more confusion in the minds of the public. Obviously, Madam Chair, they do not mean the same thing. The nomination process is what I set in motion after waiting for months in vain for a recommendation which I had formally requested from the Supervisory Board of Directors as per my letters, which I have already referenced and shared with all honorable members of Parliament. To date, no recommendation or any update on this process has been forthcoming from the board since January 31st, 2025. I have since received confirmation in October that they will be providing a name, and I requested that an expected timeline be submitted within 2 weeks, the deadline for which was yesterday, November 4th, 2025. I look forward to the board's response, as in their letter dated January 31st, 2025, they stated, and I quote, "I am pleased to report that we have identified several strong candidates who will be interviewed shortly. Upon the completion of these interviews and contingent upon their suitability, we will provide both Ministers of Finance with a formal recommendation in accordance with Article 25, Paragraph 3 of the Bank Charter." The initiative I took was therefore certainly not to circumvent any procedure, but to ensure that we fill a void which threatens the proper functioning of the CBCS itself. The process was far from being completed. It actually just started when the uproar about my nominee began. Madam Chair, I had not even been given the time and space to seek the consensus of my counterpart in Curacao with whom I must make a joint nomination as required by law. We had just gotten off the starting line, so to speak, before this controversy erupted. As a matter of fact, I had hardly returned to my office when the COM meeting of September 16, 2025, when the news broke. And what is the controversy about? I requested the CBCS board on numerous occasions to submit their recommendation for the chairmanship of the board. I have not received any such recommendation, even as I speak. I must acknowledge, Madam Chair, that the CBCS charter itself does not envision a situation like the current one we are facing and therefore does not specify how to deal with it. My understanding is that the charter is being updated to address these and other issues. In the meantime, the CBCS obviously needs a properly constituted supervisory board of directors with a duly appointed chair in order to function in the best interest of our countries. So, I brought the matter to my colleagues in the Council of Ministers before initiating further discussions with the Minister of Finance of Curacao regarding the proposed candidate. It would not have been appropriate for me to engage with Curacao on a candidate who did not have the support of my fellow ministers. I believe this was the responsible approach to take. The COM approved a conditional nomination in principle of the candidate I presented to them. The conditions that must be met for the nomination to take effect were clear. 1, that the countries of Curacao and St. Maarten jointly appoint the chairperson of Supervisory Board of the Central Bank by national decree. 2, that the appointment of the chairperson takes place on the basis of a joint nomination by the Ministers of Finance of Curacao and the Minister of Finance of St. Maarten. And 3, that the results of the screening procedure do not raise objections to the appointment of the candidate as chairperson. All these conditions are in accordance with the charter of the bank. While my predecessor, former Minister of Finance, received a nomination from the board of CBCS in 2021, the following are unclear. What happened after the joint nomination of the Ministers of Finance to appoint that candidate in question? Whatever the reason may be, Madam Chair, let it be noted that the process was not finalized in 2 years while my predecessor was still in office. Through you, Madam Chair, I have learned from the SBOD that the candidate's nomination was withdrawn after I had continuously inquired about the status of completing his nomination since assuming office. The SBOD indicated that they had been awaiting key information from the candidate since 2023. In their letter, the Supervisory Board of Directors also stated, and I quote, "Practically, integrity screening and any judicial integrity investigations are the responsibility of the relevant ministers and form an integral part of the country's nomination and appointment process." In addition, they stated, and I quote, "After the amendment of the St. Maarten Decree on April 21st, 2023, all nominated temporary members had completed security screening with no objections and have been eligible for appointment since January, February 2024. Madam Chair, allow me to be clear. This was prior to the date on which I was sworn in, which was May 2024. While this was not completed during my predecessor's term, or why it was not, is unknown to me. The reason I, as Minister of Finance, did not proceed with the appointment process of any board members is because this was agreed upon with my counterpart in June. It was decided that once Curacao had clarity on their board members, to which the Minister of Finance Curacao repeatedly requested new names to the CBCS Supervisory Board of Directors and did not receive any, we decided in that meeting of June that in order for us to provide these names jointly, that we would do so upon receiving his candidate's names request. He did not receive it. Also owing to the fact that we were already in default of getting the chairmanship after literally having begged him to understand that in theory this would be St. Maarten's turn, he allowed that process to continue. And he said, we can go ahead with chair, providing as well that he receives the 3 names that he has requested from the supervisory board. To date, he did not receive those names. As such, my focus remained on the chair position while awaiting my counterpart's progress before proceeding. Let me be clear, alignment between both countries is key, because even if I had proceeded and the governor signed the national decrees in St. Maarten, without the national decrees signed off by the governor of Curacao, the members would not be considered officially appointed. In addition, why the board waited a total of 20 months before deciding not to proceed with their nominated candidate due to missing documentations from April 2023 up to December 2024 is also unclear to me, and to be quite frank, very concerning. The question we need to ask is, what are we really doing? How does the Supervisory Board of Directors select the candidate it recommends to the Minister or Ministers of Finance? Do they publicly advertise the vacancy? I do not believe they do, as no advertisement was placed, and in their letter dated January 31st, 2025, they stated that they already had several strong candidates. Madam Chair, at the parliamentary question hour held on September 22nd, less than a week after the COM decision, I explained the process I followed, which resulted in the candidate being chosen. Several other candidates were initially proposed, 9 in total. The proposals came from a group of trusted confidants, which I had referred to as a committee. I did not mean a committee established in the official sense of the word. I am sure many of us have such a group that we consult with at times. Some of the proposed candidates declined, some had conflicts of interest, and some did not meet the profile requirements. That the last man standing was the one I proposed for the vacancy. With regards to this person in particular, suffice it to say, he has institutional knowledge and experience, as well as cultural affinity and a proven track record, all of which made him a good candidate, especially at this time. And as for his place of birth, I find it very interesting that at election time, all of us campaigned vigorously for votes, especially among groups who may not be born here. Yet, when it comes to choosing some of them to represent us, their place of birth suddenly disqualifies them, no matter if they have lived here, worked here, and made St. Maarten their home for the last 20, 30, or 40 years plus. Let me make it clear again, I am all for St. Maarteners first, but I am also not going to discriminate against someone who has chosen to make St. Maarten their home. For me, both those born here and those born to be here, as some white St. Maartener call them, once they are qualified, should be allowed to proudly represent us. Now, Madam Chair, I would like, with your permission, to give a detailed analysis of the conundrum we are in, with your indulgence. The governance crisis and statutory impossibility. Madam Chair, it is crystal clear that the Central Bank of Curacao and St. Maarten is currently facing a governance challenge characterized by over 4 years' failure in its appointment procedures. This system stems from a confluence of 3 major deficiencies: the Supervisory Board of Directors' non-performance of its statutory duty to recommend candidates for its chairmanship even after I had requested it to do so; the creation of a structural paralysis due to the clash between a fixed supermajority requirement and an incomplete board composition; and 3, the legal vulnerability inherent in relying upon temporary members for executing fundamental long-term governance decisions. Legal basis and institutional context. Madam Chair, I have never doubted the statutory duty of the Supervisory Board of Directors to recommend a candidate. This is clear from the charter, which confers on the SBOD the obligation to recommend a qualified candidate for the key chairmanship position to the Ministers of Finance for their joint nomination and formal appointment. The SBOD's capacity to perform this function is vital to the legitimacy of the bank's leadership. That is why I specifically asked the board on more than one occasion to recommend a candidate. That has not happened to date. Defining failure to recommend. Governance framework generally incorporate mechanisms to prevent indefinite organizational deadlock. In a different institutional context, the principle that governing bodies must act within a reasonable time-bound frame is consistently upheld. A failure to act often triggers a mandatory external review or default procedure. Interpretation of the 5/6 majority requirement. One of the main legal questions surrounding the chairmanship is the interpretation of the 5/6 majority requirement within the context of a board that is structurally incomplete. The answer hinges on whether the required majority is calculated based on the total prescribed seats, 7, or the current temporary membership, 5. I am sure, Madam Chair, that no honorable MP would interpret the 2/3 majority requirement to amend our Constitution as a fraction of the MPs present at the time of voting. A 2/3 majority to amend our Constitution means 2/3 of the total 15 members of Parliament. In other words, 10 yes votes. This same principle applies to the CBCS Charter, which requires a 5/6 majority of the total 7 board members for the Supervisory Board of Directors to recommend a candidate as chairperson. In practice, this means that 6 members must vote in order or in favor to nominate a chair of the Supervisory Board. While I understand that there may be various interpretations of the 5/6 majority requirement, the explanation above reflects my interpretation. Through you, Madam Chair, I would like to clarify that at no point did the board indicate that it was unable to provide a name due to the 5/6 requirement. I am mentioning this because the difference or the reference made pertains only to the part of the article concerning the board's nomination, with no mention of the 5/6 provision. As such, I wish to emphasize that we must view the law in a holistic manner. The alternative interpretation. Madam Chair, I am also aware that a counter-argument might propose that the majority requirement should be applied proportionally to the current temporary appointed members, 5, due to prolonged vacancies. Calculating 5/6 of the temporary appointed members, 5, would yield a requirement of 5 affirmative votes, requiring absolute unanimity among the sitting members. Purpose of temporary status. The term temporary in the context of the CBCS Charter derives from governance precedents concerning civil service bodies, strictly applies to appointments made under emergency circumstances. This was the case when the President of the Joint Court of Appeals took the decision on August 23, 2021, to appoint the current 5 temporary members. Madam Chair, we are now in November 2025, which means some temporary members have exceeded an 8-year term. This in itself poses a risk of objectivity, independence, and good governance, which are precisely the principles behind limiting the terms of board members. While the board is of the perspective that the term of temporary appointments does not count toward the 8-year limit as stated in the Charter, in good conscience and taking into account the principles of good governance, any members who have served on the board for more than 8 years, be it temporary or not, will not be reappointed by myself as Minister of Finance. Prolonged reliance on temporary members, in my humble view, Madam Chair, indicates a chronic failure in the regular permanent appointment mechanism rather than a short-term crisis management tool. The legal deadlock. On August 23, 2021, the President of the Joint Court of Justice, in accordance with that provision, appointed 5 temporary members of the Supervisory Board. Nowhere in that decision did he state or even imply that the recommendation of the Supervisory Board of Directors is binding on the ministers. In fact, neither the Charter nor its explanatory notes state that the Supervisory Board of Directors' recommendation is binding. I am sure the honorable MPs will agree with me that ensuring a properly constituted and functioning Supervisory Board of Directors is very crucial to safeguarding St. Maarten's interests. Madam Chair, permit me to just summarize the whole situation as follows. 1, no appointment was made to fill the vacant position of Chairperson of the Supervisory Board of Directors of CBCS. 2, as Minister of Finance, I can only nominate a candidate jointly with my counterpart in Curacao. All I did was start the process in the face of a temporary board that did not respond to my many requests for a recommendation. 3, Curacao and St. Maarten jointly appoint the chairperson by national decree, which the governors of the 2 countries have to jointly sign and which the respective ministers of finance have to countersign jointly before the appointment can become formalized and effective. 4, the Supervisory Board of Directors of CBCS normally consists of 6 members, 3 from Curacao and 3 from St. Maarten, in addition to the chair, which makes it 7. 5, if it is true that the ministers of finance should base their nomination on the recommendation of the Supervisory Board of Directors, it is equally true that in the case of the chairmanship of the board, the Supervisory Board of Directors needs the votes of 6 of its statutory members to recommend a candidate to the ministers of finance of the 2 countries. Number 6, it was only after I made numerous requests for the board to recommend a candidate for the vacant position to no avail that I decided to act rather than allow this dysfunctional situation to continue. Clearly, there was no intent on my part to circumvent or bypass the first crucial step in the process, which is the recommendation of the Supervisory Board. I had asked for it. I have not gotten it up till now. Number 7, in taking the initiative, I have acted in strict compliance and in the best interest of St. Maarten and the CBCS itself. Securing the integrity, credibility, and good governance in the CBCS should not be halted by a procedural tug-of-war. 8, given the unfortunate developments and the withdrawal of the candidate with the Council of Ministers, which the Council of Ministers has since acknowledged, the process as it pertains to that nomination is halted. Since then, I have been in contact with the CBCS board, and they have indicated that they will be providing a name for chair, for which I have requested a timeline. In the event that no name is provided within a reasonable time frame, I believe I will have no option but to have consultations with the Minister of Finance of Curacao and with the President of the Joint Court of Justice of Aruba, Curacao, St. Maarten, and Bonaire, St. Eustatius and Saba, to see how to break this impasse. We must all remember, Madam Chair, that the world is watching, and they're watching us closely, particularly international institutions such as the International Monetary Fund, rating agencies, foreign investors, and correspondent banks. For them, the inability of our monetary union to ensure the proper composition and leadership of our central bank is a critical indicator of poor governance and instability. This failure suggests potential regularity, capture, and heightens perceived sovereign risk, which could ultimately harm the economic viability of both of our countries. This is the more reason why we should refocus our attention on resolving the situation post-haste. Now, Madam Chair, if you would allow me 5 minutes before I return my attention to the ENNIA and Mullet Bay saga.
Thank you, Minister Gums, for your presentation on the first part of the agenda point, first topic of the agenda point. And on your request, I will now adjourn this meeting until 3 p.m. Meeting adjourned. Members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this public meeting of Parliament, public meeting number 5 for today. This public meeting regards an agenda point requested by members of Parliament on the CBCS and related topics. We had the Minister of Finance who has started her presentation on the topics under this agenda point, and I now invite the Minister to continue with her presentation to Parliament on the matters mentioned under this agenda point. Minister of Finance, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will start with a brief historical background to help us understand why we are where we are today as it pertains to ENNIA. On July 4, 2018, the Court of First Instance in Curacao imposed the emergency regulation known locally as noodregeling on the ENNIA Group, transferring control to the Central Bank of Curacao and St. Maarten. This date serves as the legal dividing line for separating the financially sound part of the life insurance business from the distressed part. This action was taken due to the fact that the main life insurance entity, ENNIA Caribe Leven NV, now renamed Velia NV, this standing for Verzekering ENNIA Leven in Afwikkeling, had a significant solvency deficit largely attributed to the inappropriate withdrawal of assets by the former majority shareholder. The emergency regulation gave the CBCS the legal authority to take over the administration and eventually restructure the company. The ENNIA resolution plan used this date to determine which insurance entity is responsible for which liabilities. Liabilities before July 4th, 2018. The financial obligations, pension rights, accumulated value, corresponding to premiums paid before this date remain with the old financially burdened entity, Velia NV, formerly ENNIA Caribe Leven NV. These liabilities are paid out by Velia NV, with their deficit covered by the resolution fund financed by the CBCS and the governments of Curacao and St. Maarten. In short, July 4, 2018 is a date of intervention that legally separated the liabilities of the old ENNIA group into two parts, allowing a healthy company to restart while the problematic debt is managed separately. In the new structure, ENNIA Holding NV is the parent company that holds and controls all three other entities, ENNIA Leven, ENNIA Caribe Schade, and ENNIA Caribe Zorg. The old ENNIA, which now consists of Velia NV, formerly ENNIA Caribe Leven, and Vehia NV, formerly ENNIA Caribe Holding NV, are still being managed by the CBCS under the emergency regulation imposed by the court since July 4th, 2018. Madam Chair, as part of the ENNIA Outline Agreement, a newly structured insurance group under the name ENNIA New successfully commenced operations as a solvent and independently functioning entity as of January 1, 2025. The new ENNIA is headed by the newly incorporated holding company, ENNIA Holding NV, which owns ENNIA Leven, along with the financially stable existing entities, ENNIA Caribe Schade and ENNIA Caribe Zorg. For life insurance policies, liabilities arising from premiums paid on or after July 4, 2018 were shifted from the old entity, Velia, to the new ENNIA Leven, along with sufficient assets to cover liabilities. Liabilities accrued before July 4, 2018 remain with Valia. As agreed upon in the outline agreement and as expected, Valia has fulfilled its obligations to policyholders as of January 1, 2025, and will be able to do so in the future. It is my understanding, Madam Chair, that further steps are being taken to resolve the remaining issues in the old structure, including recovery actions against parties such as Parman International, the ultimate shareholder, and others. The remaining assets in the old structure include ENNIA Aruba and Mullet Bay. Strategic options for ENNIA Aruba are being explored, considering the interests of both ENNIA Aruba and its policyholders, as well as those of the broader ENNIA group and its policyholders. Madam Chair, in response to my inquiries about the state of affairs concerning the outstanding claims against parties involved in the ENNIA saga, I have been informed that in consonance with the outline agreement, the CBCS has made and will continue to make efforts to recover damages from the solvency shortfall from all liable parties, including through the enforcement of all claims against these parties and through other civil legal proceedings. In addition, the CBCS has made and will continue to make efforts to enable a criminal investigation into those responsible for causing the solvency shortfall at ENNIA Old. More concretely, Madam Chair, the civil proceedings against former policymakers, directors, and ultimate shareholders and others are pending. The Court of Appeal has appointed an independent appraiser to determine the value of Mullet Bay for the period 2009 through 2018, as it considered this valuation relevant to certain questions of liability. This appraisal process is currently pending. Following the completion of the appraisal process, the court will proceed and a judgment is expected towards the end of 2026. However, parties may thereafter file for cassation if they disagree with the judgment. Only after the judgment becomes final and binding can the enforcement phase commence. Besides the aforementioned main liability proceedings, several other proceedings have been initiated and may still be initiated to hold the responsible parties liable and recover damages. These proceedings, amongst others, include the disciplinary and civil proceedings against several accountants who have been involved in the audits of the different ENNIA entities. In addition, the criminal investigation, as conducted by the Public Prosecutor's Office, is pending. It is my understanding, Madam Chair, that the Public Prosecutor's Office remains committed to initiate prosecution against several persons. I now move on to Mullet Bay. Concerning Mullet Bay, Madam Chair, I can inform Parliament that the property is not on the market for sale at this moment. As a matter of fact, Sun Resorts NV, Limited NV, and the CBCS are working closely together regarding the Mullet Bay file. At this moment, the two most important topics are: one, drafting a master plan for Mullet Bay, and two, obtaining an assurance or confirmation about the exact boundaries of the Mullet Bay property. With regards to number one, which is the master plan, Sun Resorts has decided to develop a master plan for Mullet Bay. According to the company, a master plan for Mullet Bay will provide a structured, long-term vision of the sustainable and commercially successful development of Mullet Bay. I have been informed that Sun Resorts supports the idea that government officials give their input in the process of developing the above-mentioned master plan. The current status is that a request for proposal of Sun Resorts for master plan is being finalized. Needless to say, Madam Chair, that for a master plan to be developed and executed properly, there is need to determine the exact boundaries of the Mullet Bay property. Clarity about the boundaries is, of course, in the interest of all stakeholders involved. To this end, Madam Chair, I have been informed that Sun Resorts has initiated steps that should lead to assurance about exact boundaries of the Mullet Bay property. For full disclosure, I received a letter dated August 21st, 2025, from the Management Board of Sun Resorts, which referred to a meeting hosted by CBCS on August 18, 2025. The letter seeks to explain the steps Sun Resort has decided to take regarding Mullet Bay, including the development of a master plan for the property. In further requests, the input or engagement of government in this process, while suggesting that the sale of Mullet Bay as is, where is, would not be beneficial to any party. The letter reads in part, and I quote, "Besides the fact that we first need to have the boundaries of Mullet Bay at the seaside set, a court case to solve this matter started on August 19th of this year. A sale as is, where is, will probably mean more time for this area to be developed and a lower sale price." It continues, "Serious potential buyers, developers, would want to know from government what the development possibilities are before even entering a bidding process. For this reason, we mentioned that Sun Resorts supports the idea of having government officials give their input in the process of developing the mentioned master plan. And also, when finished, have government give its approval to the development or the developed master plan. Sun Resorts further lists a number of advantages that could be derived from government involvement in and ultimate approval of the master plan, the key aspects of which may include the development of hotels, golf course, residential areas, marinas, and supporting infrastructure. From all of the above, Madam Chair, it can be deduced that Sun Resorts still owns Mullet Bay unless and until a final court decision states otherwise. Also, Madam Chair, it is clear that the focus of Sun Resorts is not on selling the property, but on developing a master plan for it with the involvement and approval of government. The question many may ask, what is government's position in all of this? Madam Chair, our starting point is what we have agreed to in the outline agreement. A key component of that agreement is that once Mullet Bay is up for sale, St. Maarten will have the right of first refusal. We remain steadfast on that point. So whether the property is eventually to be sold as is, where is, or in any other shape or form, we retain the right of first refusal. For us to be able to exercise that right of first refusal, we are considering all viable options that would make economic sense as well as be financially feasible. Certainly, from the look of things, Madam Chair, the Mullet Bay issue will not be solved within the next year due to the long and complex court cases it is embroiled in. The litigations will drag on for quite a while more, and in the meantime, we have a prime property lying fallow. This is where the proposed master plan by Sun Resort becomes interesting. However, Madam Chair, government has not taken a position on it. This is because we have to study all the ramifications of getting involved in the elaboration of the master plan, and particularly how that could impact the outline agreement which we signed onto and which is in force right now. We need to understand how much this master plan will cost, how long it will take, and what its tangible financial benefits will be. Any additional expenses will ultimately represent extra costs for the countries, given the commitments already established under the signed ENNIA agreement. These are discussions we must have at various levels, Madam Chair, and government will not be rushed into taking a decision on a matter that has been long in litigation. I can assure you that we will involve Parliament in those discussions before arriving at any well-thought-out position. Madam Chair, we are embarked on a journey with a good to transform St. Maarten as our national development vision states. And I quote, a resilient community and productive people who are socially and economically sustainable, and in a safe and secure environment where justice and integrity prevail, while building a strong, unified, and viable economy. This is a vision I believe all of us share. That is why, Madam Chair, I maintain that Team St. Maarten is bigger than any one individual or group. I am not perfect, and I don't think anyone is. However, I know we all want to do our best to lift St. Maarten up to where it rightfully belongs. That is what the people expect of each and every one of us. I am appealing to that team spirit, which has seen us through the most difficult periods of our history. To inspire us to overcome all the challenges before us, we need to play and win as a team. Finally, Madam Chair, I want to thank you for the opportunity to explain all these matters in full in a manner impossible for me to have done under the very limited time format of the question hour. And through you, I thank the honorable MPs for hearing me out. I also want to thank the people of St. Maarten for their incredible patience in the face of being bombarded with a narrative that does not tell the entire story. I am grateful for their understanding and continued prayers. I look forward, Madam Chair, to answering any questions the honorable MPs of Parliament may have. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister Gomes, for your introduction and presentation on the three topics mentioned under this agenda point regarding deliberations on matters related to the Central Bank of Curacao and St. Maarten. Members of Parliament, a brief or a quick reminder, the speaking time is 20 minutes in the first round on this agenda point and 10 minutes in the second round. Of course, this being a public meeting, you would have to indicate your desire to speak on the speakers list here at the desk of the Secretary General of Parliament. We have no speakers on the list, and that would mean that there is no need to speak on the topic. I don't know if MP, okay, no. Oh, okay, sorry, I was just looking at MP Ottley, but no, he is not coming to the speakers list. That would mean that we have no need for we have some changes of minds here, and being in a rather good pastel-colored mood today, I would allow the MPs who were probably trying to figure out who shall sign in first. Now we have that determined. We do have some speakers, and I speak slowly, giving them the opportunity. And members of Parliament, if you wish to speak, just sign in, please, because I don't want it to seem as if your mind is not made up, and then I am just kind of awaiting you to decide. So we do have speakers, and thank you for those who have signed up thus far. And I want to give the floor to the first speaker on this topic, namely deliberations on the issues surrounding the Central Bank of Curacao and St. Maarten. I give the floor to MP Lacroes. MP Lacroes, you have the floor.
A blessed afternoon, Madam Chair Lady, my griffier, my fellow colleagues, those in the Tribune, and the Honorable Minister of Finance and her support staff. Madam Chair Lady, I'd like to give the Minister of Finance, I have a couple questions, but I'll give her a little advice before we start there. An article came out saying Finance Minister emerges as standout in Council of Ministers' first 9 months. The Minister of Finance stands out. Her job, how she's representing the people, is better than everyone else in the Council of Ministers. Madam Chair Lady, I agree. And that is why I'm going to give you this advice. Minister, the whole rhetoric that you started your speech with concerning Parliament and the noise on what actually took place with the nomination didn't start in here. Okay? It did not start in here. And it's not anyone here that is encouraging, right, to bring emotion towards you. Please look over there on your own side. Okay? That is my advice to you. Not everybody that stand next to you clapping for you to grow. You're good as long as you're under them, not above. Then I have my questions. What specific steps have you taken to ensure that your requests to the SBOD recommendations are formally logged in and independently tracked? And why do you think that the board has consistently failed to respond within the statutory deadlines? Can you clarify why the process for public advertisement and open competition for the Supervisory Board of Directors appointments has not been implemented? And do you believe the current committee-based approach adequately protects against nepotism and conflict of interest? What are the underlying causes for the persistent temporary status of the board members? Have you initiated any legal reviews or government interventions in the past 2 years, year and a half, to compel permanent appointments? And if not, why not? Then, concerning ENNIA, has the minister had any groups come forward interested in purchasing ENNIA? Or any ideas? Has any dialogue, has any movement been made with that? And then my next question is, once the monies that were, we could say, stolen or not properly given out comes back into the coffers, do we and our government, do we get back what we put in? Or what we put in is lost? Those are my questions. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
Thank you, MP Lacroes. I continue according to my speakers list, members of Parliament, and the next speaker is MP Darrell York. MP York, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to Griffier, Minister, support staff, honorable colleagues, members in the Tribune, and a special good afternoon to the viewing public. Minister, I'll be honest with you. I am coming into this meeting with an open mind. And based on how the first and second round goes, will determine whether I agree with what you're saying or not. Because at this current point, it seems like we agree on what was done, but not yet on whether it was right, right? So I'm gonna pose some questions and also share my opinion on a particular matter, right? So the questions goes as follows. In the beginning of the minister's presentation, the minister, to you, Madam Chair, spoke on a reference, a political firestorm. I would like the minister to explain what she meant with political firestorm. Also, in the documents that the minister shared with us and explained, the board of CBCS made mention of several candidates that they identified. The minister explained the process, and if I understand it correctly, if I can conclude correctly to you, Madam Chair, that those candidates have not been shared with the minister, or the minister have never received those candidates from the supervisory board in their letter dated January 21st of this year. So if the minister can further elaborate whether those candidates, they still have them, or it's something that the minister just is not aware of as yet. As well, did the advice that was compiled, that was made, go through the proper steps, such as legal affairs, etc., prior to it reaching to come about the nominee or conditional nominee? And speaking about conditional nominee, I asked this question in the question hour, and as the minister stated, she didn't have the appropriate time to explain, so I'll pose the question again. Where in the charter references or speaks on a conditional nomination? Because we have nominees, we have candidates, but where in the charter does it make reference of a conditional nomination? Also, who is or which department or who is the first line of legal advice for the government? Through you, Madam Chair, can the minister explain me who is the first line of legal advice for the government? The minister also explained, through you, Madam Chair, that she begged and pleaded with the former Minister of Finance to keep the chairmanship. So, in other words, she tried very hard and seemingly was successful in keeping the chairmanship in the hands of St. Maarten. Was this verbal or was this via email? Because the minister sent us emails today of other correspondences, but I didn't see that in between. So can the minister explain that? And if she has it in an email, I would like to see that email. And can the minister confirm whether the former nominee, now former nominee, was presented to the board before his name was discussed as a potential nomination or a conditional appointment with the COM? Now, those were my questions, Minister. Now is the part where I share my opinion on something. Because the Minister also in her presentation referenced via you, Madam Chair, that there seems to be a question of interpretation of the law. Now, I'm not a lawyer, and so I'm not going to venture into that discussion about interpretation of laws. I leave that up to the legal minds and scholars amongst us to do such. But the only thing I have to go off of is everything that has been put in the media, that has been said in the question hour, the emails that we've received, and my own little research. Because today, the minister made a correction, rightfully so, in her wording that she chose to use in the prior meeting of the word committee. Because the minister explained that in the prior meeting that she put a committee of like-minded individuals together to conduct the search on the nominations, or the candidates. Now, there were a couple questions posed by my person and also of my colleagues here in Parliament that I would like to revisit. During the question hour, the question was posed, or the questions were posed, did individuals or candidates send in applications? That question was not answered. The other question was, where did these candidates come from? The answer then given was through a search from like-minded individuals that was then called a committee. The question was also posed, did the minister conduct this search on her own, or was it a collaborative effort with others? To that, the minister said it was done via a committee. The question was also posed, did the minister agree that in the spirit of the Central Bank Charter, there could be no political interference and that the government should maintain a hands-off approach in such appointments, in other words, good governance? And the minister underscored the fact that good governance was adhered to via the entire process. These were the questions and answers given in the prior meeting. Now, today, the minister replaced the word committee or people of the same mind field with trusted confidants. I stand to be corrected. Now, Madam Chair, 6 weeks ago, or a couple of weeks ago, it was a committee. Today is confidants, and tomorrow perhaps it might be a mere coincidence. The story as it pertains to how did we get to the candidate or to the eventual, what's the name, nominee or conditional nomination, the story seems to be changing faster than the minister's policy with tax holidays. If we say we are adhering to good governance And then the minister is stating that it was a group of confidants, and reference that we all have confidants that we confide in when trying to come to the decision. How did this search take place? Was it a simple call to a couple of friends, hey, who do you think I should put up for this nomination? Or who do you think I should nominate? Can the minister explain if this was the type of search she meant when she said a group of members of the people of the same mind field conducted a search? And if this was the way it was done, is this the reason why the question of did these candidates send in applications, if that was the reason why that question was not answered? Because if that was the way it went, clearly there were no applications. Also, the question was raised, or the question was posed, can members of parliament receive all relevant documents pertaining to the nomination and the conditional nomination? That would also encompass, for example, the advice. The minister then said that the advice is confidential and cannot be shared with members of parliament. Now, this is something that, you know, we've had with other ministers, some yes, some no, in whether advices should be shared with parliament, and that is something that the president of parliament is taking up with the members of the COM right now to come to a consensus on whether these things should be shared with parliament, and if cannot, what can be shared. Now, Madam Chair, I have come to the point right now where I'm awaiting the eventual decision on that, so I'm not going to push the minister on that point. But where I'm conflicted is in the hearing that the former candidate had with a member of parliament. The candidate, or the former candidate, explained on record that he read his own advice and that he was part of the process in making sure that the advice was sound, and that all political leaders of the coalition knew of this. Now, Madam Chair, that is where either the candidate is lying, the former nomination of which the minister swore by is the best person for the job. Either the candidate is lying, the former candidate is lying, or we have a serious problem. Because if members of parliament have to come to terms with the fact that we cannot see advices, how can a candidate review or have say or whatever in his own advice on his own nomination? And members of parliament up to today can't get the advice to see. That is the inconsistency that I have an issue with. Because the minister hasn't corrected the record of confidence versus committees, or advice or no advice. She simply restyled it. And unfortunately, governance isn't about wordplay, it's about consistency. And my issues that I'm raising up right now are the inconsistencies in the minister's explanation. I'm not going to say story, I'm going to say explanation of how we got to the nominated, the former nominee, conditional nominee. So if the minister can explain that process to me, that would bring a lot more clarity to not what was done, but whether it was right. And for now, that would be it for now concerning my questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, MP York. The next speaker is MP Irion. MP Irion, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to the SG, members of Parliament, to the Honourable Minister and her support staff. Madam Chair, you know, I think and believe that if the Minister, to you, Madam Chair, and the government were honest and clear from the beginning, as the Minister said, we wouldn't have to deal with this firestorm that engulfed the island for about 2 to 3 weeks. But because there was so much unclarity, so much, I would even say, dishonesty regarding this matter, that's why we had so much concerns and the public was so involved in a matter that could have been very, very simple. Madam Chair, I would like to start with the fact that the minister mentioned that the matter today is a difference of legal opinions. And yes, I've seen articles from our colleague members here, MP Roseberg, MP Peterson, and other lawyers in the media. But a question that was posed during the question hour still is the answer today. And what we've also seen is a legal advice that the minister requested and received from a law firm directly associated with the coalition, all right? But my question here today is, Minister, when you say, through you, Madam Chair, that there's a difference of legal opinion, whose opinion? Whose legal opinion? So my first question is, the legal advice in your introduction, was that based on the legal advice of your cabinet? Is that based off of legal advice of the Department of Legal Affairs? Or is that, again, based off of the advice from, I believe it's Brooks and Consultancy, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Is that the legal advice that you're referring to? And I want to be very clear on those again. Where does legal advice come from? Cabinet, Legal Affairs, or Brooks and Consultancy? And based on that answer a question, because last time, again, it was avoided, why would the government not seek advice from their internal body? So is this how this coalition operates? Is this how this government operates? So we have a legal body that checks the budget, that checks every other law, all the laws that the central bank provides, right, including your own that you probably brought into Parliament, has to go to legal affairs first. Has to. But now for this topic, it becomes very interesting that you don't, that through you, Madam Chair, that the government doesn't have a position from its own internal department, not even from their external lawyer that we pay a lot of money to every year. Why? Why isn't that, through you, Madam Chair, can't we call that a conflict of interest? Isn't that sort of an integrity breach? Madam Chair, and the minister again mentioned this firestorm that was created. The firestorm didn't start inside of here. The firestorm started by the government, because no member of parliament released any information to the media, none. That was done by the government. Where an article came out saying the government, and the media is not in the Council of Ministers, so there's no other possibility, right, for them to know other than the government. So the government came out with their article about the appointment of Bloom to this prestigious board as chair. It wasn't for sure the parliament. Okay, good. Then my article comes out and says, hey, this is not the right process. It's actually an illegal appointment. The minister goes on today and says, as MP York clearly stated, the position of the minister during the question hour was a committee, and the then nominee also, even in court, said that the minister had a committee put together. So the minister implied, all right, during the question hour, matter of fact, not implied, said that she had a committee put together to choose and select Mr. Bloom, a committee. So of course, any well-listening member of parliament would assume that the government will do things the right way, and yes, have an established committee. There's no member in parliament I could assume would think that it was just random friends on the road, somebody I see in the gym, another person that goes yoga with me, another person that walks with MP Sarah Westcott on her Zumba, right? Say, hey, we have our friends together. I want you 9 people come together today, and are you going to choose the best nominee for the central bank? Is that how this government operates? Is that how the Ministry of Finance operates? Because when we had SSRP, MP Lyndon Lewis, he was on my committee. MP Lewis had an MBA. To be on the committee, he had an MBA. When we established the board of a cadastre, which was done for the first time, right? We had to establish by advice at the very least who these members of the committee were going to be. So this isn't the first rodeo of the Ministry of Finance, and also that of your legal advisor, right? Who was integral in forming all these committees. So why today, for one of the most important positions, as you mentioned, Madam Chair, as the minister mentioned, Madam Chair, today we have a Friends of Friends committee established that we can't name nobody, and I asked some of the minister's friends, I don't know if they're friends or not, but say, hey, you know anybody that's part of this committee? To this day, I can't find anybody that's part of this committee that was formed. None. And it's seemingly a secret. So, we could continue to search to find out who was on this committee. And again, I want a very clear answer. Is this how the Ministry of Finance operates? When it comes to committees, we just go to friends and family and ask them for their opinion on who you think should be a part of the board. So when we're dealing with the boards of the harbor, the boards of the cadastre, the boards of the port, the airport, SAV, am I to assume that it's only friends of the ministers get to decide who goes on these boards? Again, the firestorm. The firestorm did not start by members of parliament. The firestorm started by the government. Even the question hour, even the prime minister, I guess he was also fooled by the minister, Madam Chair, because the prime minister also mentioned nothing was done. No nominee was submitted. A whole spiel in the press briefing. The minister also stood to us, as members of parliament said, nothing was done by the predecessor, her predecessor. But today it says a nominee was there in her own letter. So can I assume, there's only two options, either, and again, in all the correspondence, right, from her predecessor, which is me, her legal advisor inside all of them. He's in every single email. So for the minister to say, oh, I did not know that nominee was there, the legal advisor was part of the emails. To say, I didn't know the process, her current legal advisor was in every single email. I can have them sent to the parliament also if you want to verify. So either that the minister...
MP Irion, just that I understand you, you can have what sent to the parliament?
The letters with the letters,
Yeah.
with the advice, these same letters saying that, hey, a nominee was provided.
You have more letters than what the minister provided to parliament that you can share?
I
then
can send them.
please do.
That's what I said, Madam Chair.
Okay, no, I'm just confirming what you're sending to parliament, whether it's what the minister sent or you have others that you can
I
send
was
as
very
well.
clear. I said I can send the letters that the minister did not send, and I asked. I said
okay,
every
sure.
correspondence
Yeah.
with me and involving the board, the same legal advisor is in those letters. So am I to assume then that the minister was ill-informed by her advisors or refused
I get
to
your
tell
point.
the
I'm
truth?
just asking what you will be sending. Yes, please share what we have not received yet. If you have them, please. Thank you.
Okay.
MP, you may continue.
Okay, thank you. Will I get back those 3 minutes?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. So again, I want the minister to clarify, did her cabinet advisor that they were part of the emails, that they were aware that the individual in this letter, I'll just leave the name out, was a nominee for the chair of the board? Did her cabinet inform her the fact of that we did have board members and they had to go through a screening process, and that's where the delay happened? So was she advised, Madam Chair, or was she misinformed? Because again, the minister came to parliament, question hour, the prime minister said nothing happened. No nominee, no board members. Through you, Madam Chair, the minister said that the board members, yes, they're there, but in the process for them to be able to become official board members with the LB was finalized, I believe she said, I can start to be corrected, in January 2024 or February 2024. Yes, that's true. The minister said, I don't know why nothing was done. We had elections January 11th, all right? It was stated even by this coalition members, right? Don't appoint any board members, don't do anything, leave, stop, don't do nothing. That was what was stated, right? I was also advised not to continue, right? Because we had elections, don't continue with any political nominations. That's the reason why. Your own party, your own coalition, your own government said, do not continue with any process of appointments. You could go back and check, you could Google yourself, right? You could even use Parliament, busy with AI now, you can even use AI to go and figure it out, right? That was your coalition words, not my words, right? So, yes, the opportunity was there for the minister, the government to appoint the board members. But again, it was stated by this government, the Ministry of Finance, the Minister of Finance, and the Prime Minister, nothing was done. No board members, and why didn't have the LBB? The information is right there. In the letters from the board, right, states when the process was done, and the fact that they were not appointed because of the screening process of the VDSM, not because they weren't selected. Madam Chair, the minister also mentioned her reasoning, and I see the minister sent documents today, November 5th, a letter the minister sent to the board on October 21st. But the minister mentioned in the IS document on October 16th that she was not able to attend the parliament meeting because she inquired, or she sent questions to the central bank. Madam Chair, I'd like to ask that the Parliament is provided with those questions because there's a direct conflict with the letter we have here today. October 16th, it was stated that the minister is seeking feedback from the central bank related to the matter, but this letter was sent on October 21st, a week later. So what was sent prior to the central bank when we had a delay? Can that be sent to us, please? Madam Chair, I would also like to know through you from the minister, when was this committee of friends put together? When were they put together? When did they give their final advice? And how did they give their final advice? So was there a meeting in the office, all 9 members, some sort of secret society, right? Where they come together and say, hey, today we nominate our candidate, right? So how was this done? Or they call individually, is a 9-person WhatsApp group, and then we all in there, we do a vote, we do a poll on WhatsApp, or we do a conference call. So how did this secret service of friends come up with this name? When the government came in November, right? But interestingly enough, Mr. Bloom said, in court, right, I had 7 months to decide if I wanted to accept or not. 7 months. And that was in September, so top of the year. So it would mean that as soon as the minister became minister, her first and only objective was to form and contact all her friends and say, hey, November I'm in. January, we're going to come together and we're going to form this committee and we're going to choose, you guys are going to choose somebody. So exactly, can I have the timeline of committee of friends? November, December, January, February, March. When was this timeline? Because I want to see now when the conflict comes. When Bloom said he has 7 months, or when the minister came in. Through you, Madam Chair, I also like to ask the minister, why did the minister, with all was happening, typically if there was a correspondence from the anti-answer Dachblatt from Curacao. The minister responded and said it's inaccurate, it isn't true. But every other matter that came out, the minister did not respond to, which is interesting. So, especially the ones from Bloom. So I guess I'm left to assume that he was telling the truth, especially since he was in court. So my question is to you, Madam Chair, why did the minister and the leadership of the EP, but I guess she can't answer on behalf of that, thought it was important for Mr. Bloom to go on radio to defend the position of the minister? Or why did the minister request that of Mr. Bloom? Through you, Madam Chair, I want the minister to clarify, answer. Is it true that Mr. Bloom had 7 months to decide? Secondly, is it true that when the Committee of Friends decided that Bloom was the nominee, were all the political leaders informed? Because that's what was said in court. Were all the political leaders informed that Bloom was the nominee, the candidate? Is it true that Mr. Bloom was able to see his own advice or the advice or help to create an advice to choose a nominee. So was he part of his own advice? Was he part of creating an advice period? Did he get to see an advice period? Madam Chair, because again, the political firestorm that was mentioned only started because of the government, not because of any member of parliament. It started because of the government and the misinformation of the government. Also allow to move on to some questions posed. I mean, that was sent to me by MP Doran, who was away on medical leave. To you, Madam Chair, can the minister indicate if in Budget 2026 there are provisions made to include CapEx to acquire Mullet Bay? Recently, the minister mentioned that CapEx was secured. Were these funds included? What is the current vision of the government for the development of Mullet Bay? The minister mentioned that the central bank and the ENNIA resorts have a plan for Mullet Bay. The question is, why isn't government involved in this plan? So why isn't it three entities work together? Can we be provided with a step-by-step plan of approach on the acquisition of Mullet Bay? Can a timeline be given on all the steps taken thus far? And Madam Chair, also going back to the central bank, the minister mentioned that she had to plead and beg the former minister, Sylvania, to keep the chair position of St. Maarten. In what form was this pleading and begging done? So was a letter sent? Can we get some type of correspondence where the minister sent an email to Sylvania pertaining to this? So what was the pleading and begging? And why would we have to plead and beg when the decision is 50-50? So if we can't come to a consensus, right, then we have basically have a stalemate. And the pleading and begging is almost moot because the board will suggest the nominees as is stated in the letter sent today by the minister. So if the board sends the nominees, there's no pleading and begging to be done with the minister. In addition to that, is the minister going to finalize the process for the current board members? Is the minister going to finalize the process for current board members? Will the LBAs be written? Yes, there's a delay, seemingly, but will it now be done? That'll be all, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Irion. The next member of parliament on the speakers list is MP Veronica Janssen. MP Janssen, you have the floor.
Good. Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon to my fellow colleagues, and good afternoon to the minister, and to the people listening at home. I had only one question, Madam Chair, and actually the speaker before me asked the question on behalf of the other member of parliament, but I think I can maybe word it a different way and that it might be clearer for the listening audience. What I wanted to ask was with regards to Mullet Bay. The minister mentioned that there are some delays because of litigation, but the minister also mentioned that St. Maarten will hold the right to first refusal. Now, my question is, with the rights to first refusal, seeing that we have some time, how is St. Maarten preparing to be able to purchase Mullet Bay when the time comes? Because it's nice that we want to buy it, but we always say that we have to cut budgets, etc. So I just want to know, will the money be there? And if it's not, let's say St. Maarten is buying Mullet Bay outright when the time comes, what kind of a construct is being imagined now by government to make it possible for St. Maarten to profit from that right of first refusal? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Veronica Janssen. The next speaker would have been MP Kotai. I will give MP Kotai 2 minutes to get here, understanding that he was in the building here. MP Kotai, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My apologies for that. Good afternoon to you, Minister, and to your staff, to my colleagues in the Tribune, and to those tuned in. Minister, through you, Madam Chair, I have a few questions prior to any comments I'd have. Firstly, concerning ENNIA and Mullet Bay. For one, who owns Mullet Bay right now? For two, St. Maarten has the right of first refusal if Mullet Bay should go on sale. I believe MP Jansen Webster did just mention something along the lines, but I did miss it as I stepped out. So how will St. Maarten secure and execute that right? What is the objective of such a master plan that you mentioned? How can a master plan be drafted when the actual boundaries of the property have not been established? Why is Sun Resorts NV the one to initiate steps that must lead to the assurance about the exact boundaries of Mullet Bay? Who determines the boundaries of real estate properties on St. Maarten? And should Mullet Bay be sold, where would the proceeds of the sale go? Moving on to the CBCS. How often is the Supervisory Board of Directors of the Central Bank required by law to meet? Where is this meeting held? Who can attend such meetings? How often are the Ministers of Finance of both Curacao and St. Maarten required to meet? How often are the Ministers of Finance required to meet with the Supervisory Board of Directors? Has this been happening? And how often are the Ministers of Finance required to meet with the Management Board? How many times were such meetings held in the last year? That's it for me right now, Madam Chair. I'll hold the rest for the second round. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Kotai. The next speaker, according to the speakers list, is MP Roseberg. MP Roseberg, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Blessed afternoon, Secretary General. Blessed afternoon to the Minister of Finance and the support staff. Blessed afternoon to my colleagues present here today and the public in the Tribune and the people of St. Maarten listening online. A lot has been said. I have said a lot myself during interview, during question hour. What I would like to have some clarity on in regards to this topic, and then I'm referring to the Central Bank through you, Madam Chair. The Minister provided a lot of clarity, I believe, in regards to this matter, but I still have some unclarity that I would like to get clarified. I did some research and I understood that the President of the Joint Court has clarified during the temporary appointment of Mr. Peters that this remained valid beyond the 26th of March 2016. Although back then he was appointed as a temporary commissioner under the famous Article 25 sub 9 of the statute of the Central Bank. That appointment didn't have the fixed term in years. Instead, it continued until the vacancy for which he was appointed was formally filled by a joint nomination from both countries, Curacao and St. Maarten. So I would like to know how that is connected into the current situation that we're dealing with, where I understood, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the position of the temporary members of St. Maarten, that has already expanded the time limit of 4 years, or the extension of 8 years, a max of 8 years. How is that exactly being seen, especially seeing the decision of the Joint Court? So if that can be clarified by the Minister through you, Madam Chair. because the president of the court, are you in agreement through you, Madam Chair? Didn't he state that the temporary appointment does not count towards the appointed term as mentioned in the statute? Also, several times it was mentioned the interest of good governance, which I believe in. What is the reason that the 5 temporary members, and it was asked in different ways, but I like to ask my questions straight, maybe that's the lawyer in me. Why haven't the 5 temporary members been formally appointed? What's the reason of that? Because I understand it's very important that there is a chairman, but why does it seem that the position of chairman has more importance than the 5 members? That can be an opinion, but what's the reason that that didn't happen as yet? Through you, Madam Chair, again, do you believe that a minister, it can be any minister, but in this regard is the Ministry of Finance, is allowed to nominate without a recommendation of the board? And it was also mentioned on several occasions that there wasn't any recommendation of the Central Bank Board. Did the ministry, in any shape or form, it can be through WhatsApp, it can be through official documentation, it can be through socials, face-to-face, at any time reach out to those members to get a better understanding of the matter in order to move forward? Also, it was mentioned that Maarten is in a minority. What happened to the 3rd Maarten member, which I understood on my own research, based on my own research, was recommended since over a year ago? What is the situation with that? I asked it in a different form, but just to have it on record and to have that clarity. Do you also believe that it's good governance to ensure that all temporary members are formally appointed? And what's the reason that that hasn't taken place as yet? And where is that document of appointing those temporary members? Often you hear, yes, it's on someone's desk, or it hasn't reached my desk as yet. Where is that document at this moment? I understood as well that it was mentioned that seeing that it's Maarten's term right now to recommend a chairman, but I also, based on my own research again, and I would like to know if my research is accurate, there's a gentleman's agreement, I understood, in regards to appointing chairmen, because I understood, you know, other MPs asked it already, like, okay, based on what was brought forward today, and I'm happy for that long elucidation in regards to this matter, that it was said that Maarten needed the bag, you know, and if that's the case, it's very unfortunate, of course. But then on the other hand, then based on my research, I understood there's a gentleman agreement. And other MP asked already, like, okay, if that's the case, on paper, could the ministry provide that document? But then, based on the research, I understood there's a gentleman agreement. So Curacao was, it was Curacao's turn, and now it's Maarten's turn. So if there's a gentleman agreement, it will be switching. So it doesn't matter how long it would take, Maarten wouldn't lose their chance. So now I would like to know what is correct. Is there a gentleman's agreement, and is it Maarten's turn? Or seeing that the 4 years has passed, Maarten lost their chance, or we were saved by the fact of the ministry luckily being able to still guarantee that? So I would like to know what is correct. Let me see. Also, I have seen the several documentations in regards to the communication which has taken place, which we have received, I think yesterday, if I'm correct. And I'm seeing that there was a reaction, several letters sent, and I'm wondering, did the boards react? Did they give a response in regards to meeting? Was there any communication in regards to meeting? For example, if a meeting was suggested on Monday and the board members weren't available, that was suggested, okay, let's meet on Wednesday, for example. Did that happen? And if so, what was the response to that? When is a next meeting scheduled with the board? Because there seems to be an impasse. I don't know, impasse, sorry, thank you. So I would like to know, looking at the bigger picture, how this impasse will be resolved. And if the minister also agrees that there is an impasse, because yes, that is also needed to confirm that there is one, so that you can come to resolving that. Let me see. I do think that those will be my questions for now. I was very detailed in my question hour, and I have seen my other colleagues asking questions at which I was also interested in receiving. And I'm sure that there will be other questions asked by my colleagues. So for the sake of time and for the sake of giving my other colleagues also the opportunity to ask questions, because else we will be here tomorrow still, I will leave it at this, and I'm looking forward to receiving those answers, Madam Chair, before, when we go in the second round, that I don't need to repeat myself. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Roseberg. And just a notification before we continue, of course, we had a meeting, another public meeting scheduled at 4 p.m. That one has been postponed. And you're welcome, sir. And yes, so that has been postponed. You will be informed when, looking at the entire schedule of Parliament, and also a notification that we did receive before, a notification of the absence of MP Franklin Myers. That one was overlooked at the beginning. And now I invite the next speaker, MP Labega, to take the floor. MP Labega, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, all. Through you, Madam Chair, the minister stated that we are back to the beginning with the process of the nomination for the central bank, and I believe that that is a good thing. We have had many qualified legal opinions that differ, but I think all will agree that starting back from the beginning is what is needed. The minister was very in-depth in her presentation, and a lot of my colleagues also asked some of the questions that I had in mind. So in the sake of not to repeat some of them, I will just briefly go over some key ones that I had. Through you, Madam Chair, to the minister, since your last appearance here in Parliament for the question hour, what steps have been taken by yourself and the current SBOD to A, officially appoint the members that have passed their screening as of, I believe it was February 2024, and B, to reopen discussion with the SBOD pertaining to the nomination of a chairperson, which the minister did state that she has been in consultation with them, and I believe some nominations are forthcoming. My next question, can you explain the process of selecting SBOD members and how long are their terms? To which the minister also gave that answer, it's 4 years. What is also good to understand and get clarity, they were temporary for the 4 years. And from what the minister explains, she deems that as having served your time sufficiently. So does the minister plan to appoint the members that have passed the screening, or the minister plans to start the process of looking for new board members? Because the minister also stated that these temporary members will put forth a nomination for the SBOT. So if the minister doesn't plan to reappoint the current temporary managers, because based on the time that they have already served, when will the process and how will that process begin of looking or appointing new SBOT members? My next question was also answered. It was, what exactly is the plan moving forward, which the minister states she has been in contact with the current SBOT, and they are putting up nominations. So just for clarity, I believe that we will take the nominations from the SBOT
present it to the minister, and then we'll take the proper steps accordingly. Through you, Madam Chair. And my last question pertaining to the central bank. Through you, Madam Chair, did the minister ask the candidate that was nominated, Mr. Jairo Bloom, to go on the radio? I repeat, did the candidate that the minister nominated, Mr. Jairo Bloom, as he stated, was he instructed to go on the radio by the minister? Moving on, Madam Chair, I have a few questions pertaining to ENNIA. What is the difference between the new ENNIA and the old ENNIA? What are their ownership and management structures? Why wasn't the old ENNIA simply liquidated to give way to the new ENNIA? Are there any St. Martiners on the respective boards of the different ENNIA entities? I believe the minister listed about 3 or 4 of them. What is the total amount that a CBCS is claiming, and how much have they already collected? If ultimately successful, how would these claims affect the outline agreement? In other words, would the amount each country agreed to contribute be lessened? That'll be all for now, Madam Chair, and I look forward to the minister concisely answering these questions. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Dimar Labega. I continue, members of parliament, with the next speaker, and that is MP Lyndon Lewis. MP Lewis, you have the floor.
Good afternoon again, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Minister and your support staff. I'll get right to it. First, I wasn't going to say anything because I didn't see the need to. Thank you for your presentation, Minister. In a sense, with regards to the retraction of the nomination, first, I did congratulate the nomination of the individual. However, I was also one of those spectators that chose to go to the courthouse and listened to the individual themselves delivered to the judge, and I was ashamed. I was ashamed, very ashamed, that we put forward our confidence in certain individuals and the way they deliver themselves to a judge with regards to the latter, with regards to private information that I think that I understood came from the Council of Ministers, from when I'm talking about Council of Ministers based on the reports, because I was a minister myself. So I know when we have CARM meetings, those are confidential meetings. And based on what the individual elaborated on, sound like it came from a verslag or as if they sat in CARM. However, Minister, also hearing that they were instructed to go on the radio to clarify certain things, it had me baffled, okay? I did not, the taste that I had at that time in court, listening to this, it wasn't tasteful at all. My question to you through the chair, why has it taken 20 months for the SBOD to propose a new candidate for the chair? So why did it take 20 months? And also based on what were the members of the SBOD appointed? Because if I'm not mistaken, there was also a court ruling which they were temporarily placed. I stand corrected if that is not so. So I just need clarity on that, Minister. And does the charter not state how long the supervisory board has to submit a recommendation? It cannot be that we wait 5 years for a recommendation. I'm also looking at seeing the fact that, as my colleague referenced it as a gentleman's agreement, that we had an opportunity to bring forth a candidate, okay, from our side, and basically after a period of time, they would have that done. If we also will lose our chance, seeing the fact that there's a transition in Curacao's government, as you also mentioned, where the finance minister, the now member of parliament, Sylvania, is no longer there. So basically, what is forthcoming between discussions? Have you had any discussions with the Curacao government with respect with the Minister of Finance there, or the acting Minister of Finance currently, on this matter moving forward? And based on the Mullet Bay situation, through you, Madam Chair, when or how hard are we fighting for Mullet Bay for St. Maarten? That is my main question. How hard are we fighting for Mullet Bay for the people of St. Maarten? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Lewis. Members of Parliament, we continue with the speakers, and I give MP Waver the floor. MP Waver, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to Griffier, Honourable Minister, support staff, my honourable colleagues, those in the Tribune here joining us, and those viewing or listening via whichever medium. I don't really have much questions, seeing that a lot was posed, but also I want to thank the Minister for also providing such a clear presentation today. I think your presentation answered a lot of the questions I would have had, especially also about the procedures and what was done and what was followed afterwards. I think one of the main topic as well, as I state again what the MP before me stated, the whole situation with Mullet Bay. I'm happy to see that government is somewhat involved with the planning situation, but I think it also needs to be involved that once we're able to finally reclaim Mullet Bay as one of our own, I think that is very important. So on that, I'll wait the answering from the Minister and then see if there's any need for any other additional questions for round two. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry.
Thank you, MP Waver. The next speaker is MP Peterson, to whom I give the floor now. MP Peterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the opportunity. Good afternoon to yourself, to the Honourable Minister and the support staff, to my fellow colleagues, to those in the Tribune, to those tuning in throughout the various media outlets. Madam Chair, I will start with one question on ENNIA first, and then I'll proceed to the central bank conditional nomination. Madam Chair, to you, in regards to the ENNIA issues concerning Mullet Bay, I just want to ask if there are any plans to co-develop a master plan with Sun Resorts to kind of ensure that government's wishes are taken up and respected by any possible purchaser or purchasers in the future. That was my only question when it comes to ENNIA. And then we move on to the much discussed topic of the central bank conditional nomination, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I've spoken to the Minister, to my colleagues, to the public, many times on this topic throughout the last couple of weeks. I even put out a press release stating my opinion on the matter, which was pretty straightforward. I expected today to be nothing more than a trajectory towards accountability, but I was mistaken. I've heard too many inconsistencies, and therefore I again have no choice but to lay down the legal facts once again and to see if some sense can be made out of what I am now perceiving to be nonsensical legal confusion. I've made it clear that no nomination, whether conditional or not, can be made by this Council of Ministers. We live in a democracy, and the law stipulates what we are allowed to do, not what we wish to do based on our emotions. Madam Chair, everybody is speaking on articles today and charters, etc. But let me be the one to try to get the public to read along with us as well. The charter we are referring to is de onderlinge regeling, zoals bedoeld in artikel 38, eerste lid van het Statuut voor het Koninkrijk der Nederlanden, regelende een gemeenschappelijke centrale bank van Curaçao en Sint Maarten. And in this case, we are speaking on article 25, and in actuality, section 3, lid 3, if you may. I'll come back to lid 3 in a bit. Madam Chair, through you, the Minister mentioned that a meeting was held in July concerning the case of Mr. Jardim. But the topic of the chairman of the board was not a topic in that meeting. Did the Minister, through you, Madam Chair, ask for another meeting with the board with this topic as a subject? And if not, then why not? And also, the Minister also said that since the director has left, it's been about 3 months, and she has not received any proposal for a chairman of the board. This would mean that the director then received this ontslagbesluit and is officially gone. So my question is there an ontslagbesluit for Mr. Jardim? And that already has passed, within the 3 months period. Minister also spoke on a letter dated October 12th that was mentioned as well. I see we have a proposed interruption, Madam Chair.
Thank you for signaling that. MP Peterson. So with you signaling that, I would ask if, with your indulgence, I could give the floor to MP Irion for an interruption. MP Irion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, MP Irion Peterson started off about his legal opinion, but I just want to get some clarity because the same entity that gave the advice to the Minister of Finance said the MP is just a legal scholar and doesn't practice. So I want to know, as the MP, do you think that your words now have value and weight? Thank you, Madam Chair.
MP Irion, don't go yet. MP Irion, could you repeat your question so that I can understand? I heard a question, but where did it come from?
I do.
So you will address it, MP Peterson, so that I can hear it from you. You could explain. Thank you, MP Irion, and I now look forward to MP Rayon Peterson continuing his questions as well as responding to his colleague. Thank you, MP Peterson. You may continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm also requesting my 3 minutes back, by the way, MP.
It wasn't 3, by the way, but you'll get back your time. Okay. You may continue.
Sounds good. Thank you, MP Ardwell. I will address that as I'm going along. So we go back to what I was saying, Madam Chair, in regards to the letter dated October 12th that was mentioned that we received today in an email. After that letter of October 12th, Minister, to you, Madam Chair, you say that you have not received a proposal for a candidate or a timeline, which you requested in that letter. But since after that letter up to right now, did the board contact you, or has there been communication to actually meet? And if so, why was this not done yet? Was it because of the unavailability of the minister or the board? And can we see those correspondences? Because, Madam Chair, what I keep hearing now is that the board did not present a candidate up to now, and that they failed to identify one within their given timeline. But that's not how the selection process goes. The minister cannot give a timeline in which the board needs to present a candidate and done. That selection process is something that the central bank has to regulate. So in light of that, my question to the minister, to you, Madam Chair, is has the board contacted the minister to actually meet on this topic? And when I say minister, I'm also referring to the minister's secretary or anybody that represents the minister. Have they been in contact with the board? And let's say through emails or phone calls or whatever. Because if these so-called letters did not receive an answer, but the board has been trying to meet, then I think an unfair reality is being painted. And also concerning the temporary board positions, once recommendations are given to the ministers, this process lies in the hands of the ministers. So why were the temporary members up to now not appointed? Right now, Madam Chair, if I'm listening, it seems as if the board is not listening or is not working along. And while that can also be true, I fear that that's what we call een beetje te kort door de bocht. And regardless of that, the charter still does not allow neither the minister or the COM to conditionally nominate anybody or have anything with to do with the nomination, period. Regardless of all these concerns that the minister has, and rightfully so, none of it justifies the actions of the COM because it is simply not allowed in the law. Regardless of board members being over their term, regardless if they don't have a landsbesleit, regardless if they were placed temporarily, regardless if no proposal for a chairperson was given, regardless if since 2021 the process has been duped, none of that gives the COM or the minister the right to conditionally nominate any chairperson in regards to the central bank. It is simply not allowed. And if there is an issue concerning the board not doing its duties, which proposing a chairman is a part of, then you as shareholder should need to deal with the board. Either you fire them or you don't, based on them not doing their job, which you have to also substantiate. But the law simply does not give the minister or the Minister of Finance in Curacao any type of authority to appoint any candidate, period, whether it's conditional or not. But in light of what the minister said, Madam Chair, concerning that there is a group of individuals from which advice is sought, like-minded individuals, as has been said, and while we may laugh about it here on the floor of Parliament, it is a serious matter, because it was mentioned on record on the floor of Parliament. Not a committee, but a group of, I would say, trusted confidants. Madam Chair, if that group was mentioned on the floor of Parliament, then can we please get a name list of who exactly we are referring to? And aside from that, can we get a list of all of the supposed nominees that were proposed by this so-called group of confidants? 9 names, if I'm not mistaken, regardless if they were deemed qualified or not. For transparency's sake, of course, because we cannot mention individuals that we seek advice from on the floor of Parliament, but not determine who we are speaking about. This is serious business, Madam Chair. Then, I want to scroll on to the legal advice that the minister received on this matter. We have been made privy to an advice that the minister chose to follow in regards to this conditional nomination. And, for my opinion, the fact that she received faulty legal advice. She received wrong legal advice. And you see, Madam Chair, when it comes down to the legality of things, some might have an opinion that attorneys at law can somehow interpret the law better than regular lawyers. But lawyers actually deal with all fields of law, while attorneys at law normally focus on certain fields. And I look at my MP Roseberg to confirm that for me. But this has nothing to do with that. Legislative lawyers is who we need advice from, not law firms who represent their clients. And clearly, after seeking this advice that the minister chose to follow and seeing this topic couldn't be more on topic. I refer back to Article 25 that we spoke about, Section 3, Madam Chair, which states, benoeming van de voorzitter geschiet op gezamenlijke voordracht van de ministers, welke voordracht is gebaseerd op een aanbeveling opgemaakt door de 65 van de meerderheid van de Raad van Commissarissen. Here it is made abundantly clear, Madam Chair, dat de voordracht is gebaseerd op een aanbeveling. It literally translates to, the nomination is based on the recommendation by the board. There is no other way to nominate, according to this article, period. It simply does not state anything to substantiate otherwise. De voordracht is gebaseerd. It is based, punt. And nowhere does it speak of any aanbeveling from the minister or from finance of St. Maarten or the one from Curacao. It solely speaks on the aanbeveling from the board. That's it. Where is the wiggle room, Madam Chair? But then I read the conclusion of the legal advice that the minister chose to follow, and it simply says, and I quote, it is the responsibility of the Minister of Finance of St. Maarten and Curacao to take initiative to compose a supervisory board, including its chairperson. This nomination is fully consistent with the statute, and then goes on to mention Lit 10 about the gentleman's expertise, whilst not explaining at all how this even would be in compliance with Lit 3 to begin with. Zero legal arguments, Madam Chair. So regardless if you are a lawyer, an attorney at law, a judge, or simply a paralegal, this faulty legal advice is still faulty. And it's actually one of the main reasons why the minister is here in front of us today. And whether or not it's actually a conflict of interest for said law firm to give legal advice is a topic for a whole nother day. I also want to make it abundantly clear, Madam Chair, on this floor of Parliament, that none of these arguments have anything to do with the person that was wrongfully, conditionally nominated. It's a shame that this gentleman got dragged into the politics of it all, especially concerning such an important topic as our central bank. These concerns have nothing to do with the gentleman at hand or his character, because in my opinion, we don't even reach to that step as yet. Although I definitely can see an issue arising there as well, we're not even there yet. But this whole back and forth, we seem to have another
MP Peterson, don't worry, I'll introduce the
thank you.
one standing unelected. I note, MP Peterson, with your indulgence, I know that a member of parliament wishes to make an interruption. MP York, I give you the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I said, I'm not going to get into the interpretations and the explanations of laws. I'll leave that up to others, such as what MP Peterson was just doing. But I think it's important for the good MP to explain whether he is explaining the law or explaining his interpretation of the law. All right, because according to the legal confidant of the minister, not all legal minds and scholars can interpret the law properly. So it's very important for the viewing public and us also in here, is he explaining his interpretation or is he explaining the law in the cases of what the examples he just used just now? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP York. I'm sure MP Peterson will go into it because the question was understood
Pretty clear,
by
yes.
me, a non-lawyer, so I'm sure MP Peterson got it as well. MP Peterson, you may respond.
Indeed, MP York, thank you for that interruption. What I am stating here is my legal opinion, which has been confirmed with many other lawyers, attorneys at law, judges, legislative lawyers as well, and regular lawyers like me. Coming back to what I was saying, Madam Chair, in regards to the gentleman and his character and this not even being about him, I'm also hearing a lot of back and forth about it's our turn and then it's Curaçao's turn and then it's our turn again and there's a gentleman. Madam Chair, the law is clear. The board members, regardless of where they're from, need to propose the best candidate possible for the position. All these politics around it, they can miss me with it because we need to do the right thing according to the law. You see, Madam Chair, one thing the minister was indeed is that when she said the world is watching us, and that's exactly what I experienced after this whole so-called appointment. When my counterparts in IPCO were asking me, what is your government doing going down this road? And then it's very concerning to me as to how we were perceived by the outside world based on our own local actions. And then when our Prime Minister proceeds to say that crab mentality is why there is an uproar on this topic, whilst failing to acknowledge the actual laws that we're supposed to follow to do so, then indeed, we're looking bad to the outside world. So rounding off round one, Madam Chair, I want to ask the Minister, is the Council of Ministers going to retract their conditional nomination and admit that it was not their prerogative to begin with, regardless if it was withdrawn by Mr. Bloom or not? Second question, Madam Chair, is the Council of Ministers going to admit that they were following faulty legal advice that led to the decision to begin with, and that this is not the right precedent to set by law? And is the Council of Ministers, through you, Madam Chair, going to allow it to be executed in its right legal way without any intervention that is not allowed by law? And finally, Madam Chair, a request to the Council of Ministers, can we get Ye's advice on this topic? Because I assume that before seeking external legal advice that we have to outsource, that government surely would have made use of the integral internal legal affairs department that we have in government right now. For me for now, Madam Chair. Bedankt voor de gelegenheid.
Thank you, MP Peterson. And members of Parliament, we continue with the list of speakers, and I now give the floor to MP Omar Ottley. MP Ottley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I must say, this meeting today, according to the public, at least in my phone, is hot, hot, hot. And MP Rayon Peterson get a lot of fires today. You know, all jokes aside, Madam Chair, the MP, I specifically wanted to wait till after the MP spoke. Because in hearing the minister's explanation today, I was thinking that, you know, I see where the miscommunication happened. And I see where maybe things could have been avoided. And then MP York asked some very good question, and when he started to present what was said during the question hour compared to what was said now, I started to trifle a bit, through you, Madam Chair, Honorable, Honorable Minister. I was really hoping that you could have come today and prove your point. But after hearing the MP, I have no choice but to say the law is the law. And I have often believed that, yes, law is left up to interpretations because prosecutors and lawyers and judges battle each other over the same law. So it is left up to interpretation. That's why we have something called jurisprudence. So I look forward, when it comes to central bank, I don't really have much questions on the nominee at this moment. I really and eagerly await your answers to the following MPs. Because their questions, their remembrance of what was said compared to what was said now was on point in my view, so I'll await eagerly your response. As it pertains to Mullet Bay and ENNIA, there's a saying that nothing is really new. History just repeats itself. I refer to an article of 2014 by the then Prime Minister, MP Sarah Westcott Williams. And to show you how history repeats itself, I just phrase a piece right here. It says, the UP leader is correct in his assessment that the decisions, the UP, then Teo Hilliger, but it's just showing how the world comes back around. The UP leader is correct in his assessment that the decisions regarding the central bank has to be one of Parliament and has far-reaching impact on the country of St. Maarten. The fact that the feeling that he seems, or they seems, that has been created, that the Minister of Finance is acting on his own accord is not the feeling of this government. And she went on to say that any decisions would have to be carefully studied, deliberated in Parliament, and the representatives of our financial system is no small issue. The feeling is there again, and this is the problem. History is repeating itself whereby members of Parliament and certain members of the coalition and members of the COM feels that the Minister of Finance is acting in her own accordance. And while Honorable Minister of Finance, I know we go on a rule of, I guess, no snitching, but in the media, many of your colleague ministers have separated themselves from this decision. Some of them stating that they were not even here when this decision was taken. So again, history is repeating itself. The reason that, again, I agree with my colleague MP who spoke before me saying that, yes, the gentleman's agreement and one and then the other one. No, the law is clear. You know why? Again, in 2017, I refer to the words of Sarah Westcott Williams. Monetary union's fate should not be left to political wind of the day. We cannot afford, again, something as important as central bank. And I'm not singling out the chair lady,
Yes, you are.
but when I hear members speak and other members speak during presentations and praise the DP and the DP footprint being in every step in the way forward, you being from the DP, through you, Madam Chair, I can only refer back to the DP's footprint. And the footprint is getting lost in the sand. It's getting lost. Because I didn't make this up. This comes from MP Sarah Westcott, unless she had a change of mind, and I'm sure she'll send out the next one. Okay, good. Another one that is very important, and then I'll get to my points, why I'm making these points. It says the most important tool that the government has in its hands right now is to establish a development plan for the entire area, as mentioned in the defeated motion of the same to continue. It says, I hope and pray that the government will still urgently follow this route, regardless of what negotiations are taking place. It also says, regardless of which route is taken, even if the first route is expropriation, as per the defeated motion, the conditions of the development plan and proof of financing are paramount. Other than sometimes portrayed, our laws are quite rigid, and lucky for us, this is the case. With central bank having the reins in the matter of Mullet Bay, it therefore behooves the government and parliament to at least get insight into what the state of affairs. And this is the part that gets me, and which I agree with right now. In my view, if the sale or development is to be stalled, it should be done in order to allow the government the opportunity to decide on the future of Mullet Bay. I am not for, Mullet Bay is not on sale yet. We have first right of refusal. Mullet Bay will be, no. We have to stall until we are in control. Because through you, Madam Chair, I have another article from the advisor of PSAS, Prime Minister of Curacao, that says, boldly to his parliament, the members of parliament in St. Maarten can say what they want. That's right. Mullet Bay belongs to the central bank, and the central bank is ours. Boldly. So, Madam Chair, through you, while the minister, and I understand your passion and your fight for St. Maarten, it's kind of hard for me to have that faith when this was immediately after passing the ENNIA law. He made that statement. Basically a slap in the face. And I don't know where in my brain or in my heart feel, I hope not, because if that's the case, then definitely you don't need to be sitting there, that you would want to give away Mullet Bay. And when I stood up and I said I cannot vote for it, I said, I do not want to tell the public of St. Maarten, I told you so. There's an article here from 2003 where the Dutch is warning Curacao. If Curacao continues to object to the rescue plan of ENNIA's pension fund, it will be dire consequence for St. Maarten. Curacao has been playing for all these years. And Madam Chair, through you, it was said during our debate, St. Maarten can survive a couple more years, but Curacao couldn't survive 2025 if the actions had not been taken. So we took a risk to avoid increased interest rates. We took a risk to help Curacao right now. And immediately after Curacao slapped us in the face and said, we can do what we want, they control the Mullet Bay. Well, I can say this as a member of parliament. It'll be a cold day in hell as this member of parliament sits and watch Curacao take over Mullet Bay. Because something has to give. Something has to give through you, Madam Chair. So I say to you, Honorable Minister of Finance, through you, Madam Chair, ensure, because first right of refusal with no money in the coffers, no way of acquiring Mullet Bay, and also not only the first right of refusal, but we have to pay a percentage on it. That amount, Mullet Bay in itself, can equal to our entire budget. The sale of Mullet Bay in itself can equal to our entire budget. So we need to be in the preparatory stages. And I refer back to the article. The only way that we can acquire Mullet Bay is to stall and prepare until we are ready and ensure that that is the case. Madam Chair, I have no further questions. I just don't want to say, I told you so. As it pertains to Mr. Bloom in the appointment of Central Bank, I'll await the answers before the second round, and then I'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Ottley. Members of Parliament, there are no further speakers on the topic. MP Ottley, you referenced to me on several occasions and you quoted from statements that I have made. There was no controversy in your statement for me to react in terms of a personal fact, but I can tell you for sure that I haven't seen the reason yet to change those stances to which you referred. So I thought I need to answer to the fact that I was mentioned on, in your statement on more than one occasion. When I do see that, I would be the first to come out and state a changed position because of whatever. So with that being the case, and all members who desired to speak having spoken, I'm going to adjourn for 5 minutes as we caucus with the minister and her staff about the continuation of this meeting, which will begin. The continuation will begin with the responses from the minister to the questions and queries by members of parliament. So I shall adjourn until 5 minutes to 5. Meeting adjourned. Members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, I hereby reopen this public meeting of Parliament, public meeting number 5 for today, November the 5th. The meeting was adjourned at the point where all members desirous of speaking have spoken, asked their questions, made their comments on the topic of matters relating to the Central Bank of Curacao and St. Maarten. 3 of those specifically mentioned, namely the appointment of a chairperson for the CBCS, the matter of ENNIA, and the matter of Mullet Bay. In caucusing with the Minister of Finance on this topic and the continuation of this meeting, the Minister indicated that she has tallied 125 questions from members of Parliament. Her estimate is that she would require approximately 1 week to respond to these questions. However, given Parliament's own schedule, we will determine when the meeting can be reconvened, taking into account the time the minister has asked for. So what I'm saying is that it mightn't be next week per se, because Parliament also has its own schedule to look at. Given that, of course, you will be informed as soon as possible when this meeting will be reconvened. I want to thank all the members of Parliament for their participation on this very important topic. I want to thank the Minister and her support staff for their presence and the introduction and presentation given by the Minister of Finance. I thank our own support staff here in Parliament and all who remained tuned in to this meeting. This public meeting of Parliament is hereby adjourned until further notice. Meeting adjourned.